the admissions counselor who I got the application from said, well, what about you? And I said, well, I want to be a lawyer someday, but I still need to complete the rest of my units for my undergraduate degree. Yeah. And that'll be a couple more years because I've been doing this part-time for about 8 years.
Yeah.
And she said, well, this school has a special program that if your testing scores are high enough and your undergraduate grades are high enough, you can be admitted as a special student. And you can get your underlying bachelor's degree at the same time you get your law degree.
So things are just lining up for you. Like this is like... Welcome, Neil, to the studio. You are the principal of Pedersen Law. Thank you for joining me today. How's your New Year's going?
Well, thank you for letting me be here, and it's going great so far.
So Neil, we've known each other for a few years now.
Yes.
You're my go-to guy when I want to get out of trouble. How long have you been practicing law?
I've been a lawyer for a little over 33 years now. Oh. And before that, I spent maybe 3 years in the legal industry while I was going to law school.
Wow. So like you getting into law, so let's go back, like why did you, well actually let's start with what type of law have you been practicing?
Started my career as a business litigator and insurance coverage attorney. And then about 20 years ago, I transitioned to doing primarily employment law.
Okay. And that's kind of how we met.
Yes.
Because I was in trouble for employment law. Not that it was intentional,
right?
But I think there's a lot of stuff in this that's very unintentional that business owners or small business owners have no clue that they're supposed to follow certain rules.
Absolutely. California is the most complicated employment law state in the country. A California employer has a great challenge in trying to be compliant, as do people in other states as well.
But a lot of this stuff is not like, you know, when we talk, say, employment law and we did this and we did that, but a lot of this stuff is not as bad as like we're abusing people with a whip and beating them with sticks, right?
Yes, I mean, it depends on the employment law topic. I deal with discrimination, harassment, retaliation, in addition to like wage and hour issues and leave issues, that type of a thing. And it can get pretty ugly when you're talking about some of the discrimination, harassment, or retaliation. Wow.
So when did you start thinking that you wanted to even be an attorney? Where did that come into your mind? And did you grow up as a kid saying, hey, I want to be the next, I don't know who was on TV back then?
Yeah, no, actually, but it was junior high school.
Okay.
In junior high school, I was somewhat of a nerd. Okay. And I had a good friend who was also a nerd, and we were into astronomy. Okay. We had our own little telescopes, and we go out and look at Saturn and all these different things on a Friday evening. We even had our own little club called the Habra Astronomical Society, wow, which was basically like 7 junior high kids that would get together once a month and talk astronomy.
With a name like that, I think it's going somewhere.
Yeah. And when we were in 8th grade, the local high school was sponsoring a debate tournament. Okay. And the topic was something about financing the space program. And we thought, oh, we want to get in on that topic because we had that. So we went and we won that tournament. And I found out that debate was kind of fun. So when I went to law school, or went to high school, I joined the debate team and really got into it. And I found out that it's something that really, lit my fire. Wow. Okay. And after doing that for a couple of years, I realized maybe the best thing to do when I get out of high school is to eventually go to law school and become a lawyer. But that didn't happen right away.
But now, when you're seeing like that, you like the debate, is the idea that you've seen stuff on TV of attorneys, like when you see how I object and you're seeing all this stuff happening in court, is this actually a part of what you think it's going to be like?
Certainly, that would be yes in part. Okay. Right. But
and I can see where the debates, like where the debate and connecting it with pulling evidence and shouting in the courtroom. I can see where you're going with this.
Right. I don't think that influenced me back then in junior high and high school. Okay. It did since then. Back then it was just I enjoyed what I was doing. It was research. It was preparing logical argument, and then it was oral presentation.
Yeah.
And I found that I really enjoyed doing all of those things. And of course, then when you think about it, that's exactly what a trial attorney does as well.
Got it. So now, okay, so you're going to high school, you're realizing that this is the right career for you, and you're saying, okay, well, now it's time, I'm going to do it. So what do you do? Do you start looking into counselors? How do you start like finding out what you're supposed to be doing?
Well, what I should have done and what I did do were two very different things, because what happened is when I got out of high school, I ended up getting married within 6 months of graduating high school.
Wow.
Had a baby 10 months later.
Wow.
And I didn't have the time or the money at that point because I had a family to go off and go to full-time college and law school and that type of thing. So I went to the grocery industry, where my dad was a big mucky muck in one of the big grocery industry companies. And I thought, well, I'm going to follow in my dad's footsteps because it looks like I like what he's doing, which, by the way, was HR. It was still employment related.
Got it.
So I ended up spending 11 years in the grocery industry trying to work myself up there, but always wanting to still consider the idea that I could be a lawyer someday.
So this never left your mind then? So that's what you're saying. So it just never left your mind, and you're saying, okay, well, I'm doing my stuff. I just got to put food on the table, got to take care of my family. Responsibility now has deviated you off the original plan. So you're taking the scenic route to become the attorney.
That's right. That's right. And while I was working full time, 6 days a week, I was going to school at night at local community colleges to build up my units and that type of a thing. And so I had that long-term goal, but it was taking a long time to get there because, you could only take maybe 2, maybe at most 3 classes a semester while you're working full time.
So how long were you in the grocery industry, or how far did you progress in the grocery industry before you said, okay, it's time?
Right. I quickly advanced to a produce department head, which is the guy in the store that runs the produce department. And I stayed at that position for about 8 years after I had achieved that. So, and frankly, about at that 8-year mark, I was starting to get frustrated that I could not promote beyond that point because I was too young. I was told I was too young.
How old were you back then?
Oh, well, that would have been 27, something like that. And the next step was a fairly significant management position over all of the produce department heads in the area. And my one of the superiors said, they're just not going to promote you until you're old enough because you need to be able to command respect of much older people.
So they were discriminating against you for your age.
Yeah. Although to be truthful, there is no age discrimination for young age. It's only for old people over the age of 40. But yeah, so I felt like I was at a somewhat of a dead end. But at the same time, I was still working toward the other goal anyway.
Got it. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're managing the produce department. You're still going to school. You believe that you're still going into law. You're trying to manage both now. You've got obviously a household. It's obviously slowed you down from where you thought you were going to go. Like this just deviated you completely off your path. How do you get out of how do you make that transition from finishing your college to the next level of taking your bar? How do you do that?
Right. Well, at some point along the line, I kind of thought, when I still thought I was going to follow in my dad's footsteps and go into management at the grocery company, the idea of being a lawyer started fading away as not being really realistic.
And what was your dad's comments on this? Like, what was your dad thinking? Like, was he saying, stick to the good job, this is a good paying job, or was he saying that those dreams are?
He said, you can do whatever you want to do, and you should do what you like to do, which is
encouragement.
Awesome advice, right? And he helped me, with money and other things to get, to take the classes and that type of a thing, and to help, raise a young family, because eventually I had 2 kids pretty quickly, and they were growing up. But while I was taking these junior college courses, I went to a community college and took a speech class because it was part of the required, underlying requirements. And the person who was teaching that speech class actually happened to be one of the debate coaches at that school. And we talked after one class, and I told him I had had some debate experience, and he tried to encourage me to be on the debate team there.
Okay.
Even though I was working full-time, taking 3 classes.
So he's like pulling you back into debate. Like
Yeah.
it's like people are seeing that skill set inside you.
Yeah, and so I did, and I competed on the junior college debate circuit.
Yeah.
And I had some success. I ended up winning the national championship in Lincoln Douglas debate, and that rekindled my desire. I really wanted to be a lawyer.
Wow.
But I still didn't see the path. And unfortunately, the way bad things can turn good,
Yes.
I moved out to Las Vegas with my family to open a monster store out there with the grocery company. And eventually my wife left, and we ended up getting a divorce. And that was it was a point in time where I could reassess where my life is going because everything had changed.
Yes. That's it.
And so
Doors have opened, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Some doors have closed, others have opened.
Yes.
Which is I've found in life is really happens quite often.
Yes.
So I came back to California, and I was dealing with the fact that I had gone through a divorce, no longer living with my kids full time. And it was tough, as anybody who is in that situation. So I went to have some counseling, and I told my counselor that I'm thinking of going back to college to compete in debate because I've got one more year of eligibility. And he said to me, Neil, why don't you just go to law school and become a lawyer and get paid to do that?
Wow, it's like everybody is pushing you in that direction.
Yeah, and it made sense. I mean, why, certainly there might be some glory in going back and having a great last year on the debate circuit, but why not spend all of that energy and the time, because my time was limited because I'm still working full time, to actually go in that direction. So I thought that's a great idea. And about the same time, I had been renting a room when I moved back to California, and the person who owned the home that I was renting the room with said, I'm thinking of going to law school, and there's that law school over there on such and such a street, and you drive by it every day to go to the community college. Would you mind stopping by and picking up an application? Wow. This is back before there were online applications, right? And so I did, and the admissions counselor who I got the application from said, well, what about you? And I said, well, I want to be a lawyer someday, but I still need to complete the rest of my units for my undergraduate degree. Yeah. And that'll be a couple more years because I've been doing this part-time for about 8 years.
Yeah.
And she said, well, this school has a special program that if your testing scores are high enough and your undergraduate grades are high enough, you can be admitted as a special student. And you can get your underlying bachelor's degree at the same time you get your law degree.
So things are just lining up for you. Like this is like you're being pulled and pushed into this direction. It's going from debate team to the roommate saying, let's go get an application. Like there is so much just literally kicking you down the door into the law industry. Yeah,
it really has been amazing. An amazing path.
Yes.
And so I signed up, went to law school, got both my bachelor's degree and my JD at the same time, and the rest is history.
So now you're officially the lawyer, or you've got your law degree and you're ready to go out there into the world. Your next step, do you think that you're going to start your own practice? Do you want to go and work for someone? Like, what's your game plan? Like, how do you plan to get this off the ground?
Well, what I did was while I was in law school, in addition to working my grocery job, I took jobs working as a law clerk in various law offices.
Oh, so you were getting experience.
So I could get experience and also see what the various practice areas look like.
Got it.
And I always give advice to students that I teach now. Yeah. That's a great way to go because you don't want to jump into a practice area and find out you hate it.
Yes.
And so I did that. And when I got out, things kind of led me again.
Wow.
The last firm I worked at made an offer before I even took the bar exam for me to be a lawyer after I passed the bar. And they offered to pay for my bar exam and to pay for a month of time off to study for the exam.
Wow.
And then I would come back to work for this business litigation firm.
That's amazing.
And it seemed like a really a really good move.
Wow. Yeah. If someone's offering you, I'm going to pay for everything and do it all for you, how could you not?
Right. So I did that, and I stayed at that firm after I became a lawyer. I stayed at that firm for only about 6 months, and then the firm imploded. They let all of their associate attorneys go. They were having financial difficulties, some issues with the partners. And so I got a phone call in Arizona at my father-in-law's, just after my father-in-law's funeral, saying, "You've been let go. We didn't want you to hear through the grapevine."
Wow.
And so here I am. I'm 6 months in and I don't have a job.
But you've got the experience. They've given you everything. They paid for practically most of the stuff that you needed to get you over the final mile. So you really are ready to go. I mean, you're ready to go and create something.
Yes, and again, serendipitously, for the 6 months I had been working at that firm, we were co-counsel with another attorney in West Los Angeles on a big insurance bad faith case where we represented one of the people who bought the insurance, and it was against a big insurance company. And when I was let go, I called this other attorney that I'd been working closely with and said, "Hey, I guess I'm not going to be working with you any longer, but it's been a pleasure, and if you know of any openings, let me know." He immediately hired me.
Wow.
Because he was going to continue working on the case, and he was the lead plaintiff in the case, and I basically was the young kid who knew everything about the case, knew all the documents, knew what all the depositions said. Wow. So he immediately hired me, and I went to work for that firm.
Wow.
So again, it was just everything was at the right time.
So you should have skipped that guy and said, "Hey, okay, who's next?"
Yes, that's right. Right. So when I took that job, I told him, "Listen, you're way up in West LA. I really don't want to move up there. I like my family where it is right now. It's a good child-friendly neighborhood, that type of thing. So I don't think I can stay here forever."
Yeah.
And he said to me, "Don't worry, I want to move my family down to where you live."
Wow.
And I said, "That's wonderful. That's wonderful." So I was there at the firm for a couple of years, and he eventually said, "Why don't you go down and look for some office space for us?" And I did that, and eventually brought back some good choices. And finally, at that point, he said, "I had a long sit down with my wife, and we've decided we don't want to move." And I said, "Well, I can't stay. I just can't make this hour-and-a-half drive through this terrible traffic that just drives me crazy."
And had you signed the lease for him on this building that you had found? Okay,
no,
so,
I just
but
found
you had done all the work
proposals.
for him, right? So you building the experience of finding a building, what to do, how to do it, where things are going to come, how we're going to make it. Wow. So that's, wow. Okay.
So, when he told me that, I said, "I can't stay. I'm really sorry." And we ended up parting ways, friendly. But at that point is when I decided I was going to open my own law office. I didn't have a single client. I had less than $3,000 in the bank. And I went out and started.
So okay. So now, do you go with the office that you originally had found, or do you actually use the same real estate agents to go find you the next office that you're going to be looking for? Because obviously you got now experience on how to do it, and you're kind of seeing how they were kind of pushing you to do it on their dime. Right. So where do you find your first place?
I actually didn't go back to any of those places because those places would have had a lot more space than I would have needed as a fledgling law firm.
How many people were in that industry, that law firm?
There were 6 or 7.
Okay.
Right. And so when I was going to go out on my own, at first I thought it was just going to be me.
Yeah.
And so I would need, very little space. But then I went to talk to a friend I had worked with at the very first firm that had imploded, and said, "Hey, would you like to go start a practice with me?" He had about 7 years additional experience than I did, and he had different practice areas than I had done. So I thought that would be a nice mix. And so he decided we go out and we created a firm called Pedersen and Wright, and we got a little executive suite that had a 2-room suite, and started working there. And
so now, finding your first client base, are you nervous at this point of where's my first client going to come from, and how am I going to find it? I need to figure out marketing. What's your thoughts at that moment?
Well, again,
don't tell me the landlord said, "Handle my case."
Another very serendipitous moment. When I finished meeting with my boss saying, "I've got to go," and I went to pack up my stuff, there was a phone message on my desk from a law school friend.
Okay.
I packed that in the box, went home, made the phone call. She was a bankruptcy attorney. She said, I have a client whose company has been put into bankruptcy by his bonding company, and he has personal guarantees on about 15 different contracts, and he needs somebody to assist him. Do you think you can help? And I said, I'd be happy to.
So client number one, done.
Client number one, 15 matters already.
Fantastic.
Right? And it was just the first month I was profitable. Again, it was just serendipitous.
Wow.
When I teach students how to run a law practice,
Yes.
and I tell them they should expect to not be profitable for several months before they finally start making enough money to pay for their rent and their legal research and everything else. But right place, right time. And this gentleman, he was a wonderful man, and I helped him get out of a lot of trouble that was none of his making.
And your confidence at that time. So now you've taken on this. It's a fairly big case. A guy giving you 50 multiple jobs, but your confidence now in you going out there into the world and saying, okay, my law office, here's my first client. How's your confidence with this?
Well, I had the fortune. Again, I feel like I've led a very blessed life. Yeah. I had the fortune that the firm I was working at let me try my first case the first week after I got out of, I passed the bar. Wow. And it was a judge trial, and I went and I won against an experienced trial attorney, but I had the facts on my side.
And all those years of debating has actually come into play now,
yes, right? Yes, because again, being a lawyer is research, writing, and oral advocacy if you're a litigator. That's what I wanted to be. And when I was at the firm where the guy picked me up and we worked together, we had litigated several cases together, really big cases. In fact, one ended in a $62 million verdict here out of Orange County, California. And I worked through that whole trial with him. So I had a great deal of experience trying cases by the time I was, 3 years into the practice of law. And so I had a level of confidence that I could do it if I could get the business. Right. And
so now your foundation, like you've built up a very strong foundation with all these steps that you've been taking. The foundation became very strong. And as that foundation is becoming strong, now you do some teaching as well, right?
I do, yes.
Now, when you're teaching, like, why is it you want to teach people now? Like, right. why is it? I mean, you have a strong foundation, and that's like, wow. But the teaching part, are you helping take some of that guidance and to the new students that you have?
Yeah, kind of paying it forward.
Yeah.
I love to mentor and see people grow. It's something that just, again, lights my fire.
Yeah, so just like me in business too. I love it too. We were just talking about that prior.
Right. So, when in my practice because now I have young attorneys working for me and paralegals, that type of thing. I like to mentor them, but teaching, I'm able to affect the lives of, maybe anywhere from 15 to 30 students per semester that will then eventually go out and become my colleagues. And I find a great deal of satisfaction in seeing them grow and become successful attorneys.
It's like that fire from the debating, right? It's a different light that you're trying to give.
I think probably so. Yeah.
So you're teaching, and with that teaching, where did you think that teaching was going to go? Like, where did you think that you were going to create a school for students? Like, where did you think it was going to go? Or is this something that you just did as an outlet for you, or a side gig, if you want to call it, while running your firm?
It was a side gig. I wasn't doing it for the money, because as an adjunct professor, you don't make a lot of money. Okay. I did it because of the satisfaction I got from it. Okay. I enjoyed working with the students. I enjoyed the camaraderie with the professors. In fact, not many, but some of the professors that taught me were still at that law school when I went to teach there as an adjunct, and they welcomed me with open arms. Wow. And I was teaching classes like once a week, 3 hours in the evening, and the rest of the time I was running a law office.
Do you find that from when you began law and the new people coming into law now, is there a different reason why they're coming in? Is it the fact that whether it's TV or whether it's the fact that lawyers get paid a lot of money, do you feel like the reasoning of why people are coming to law, I'm not saying everybody, do you think the reasoning has changed?
I'm a bit jaded, and I will say yes.
Okay.
I think a lot of people go to law school now because they see it as the best way to earn good money. Okay. And I'd love to talk to them before they go to law school, because some lawyers make a lot of money. Yeah. They give up their life to do so, right? I'm talking about, many, many hours, 7 days a week sometimes, but you're going to earn the big bucks. Yes. If you want to have a real life, you're not going to earn super big money, but you're going to have a great life and a great deal of satisfaction as long as you choose a practice area that really makes you happy.
So it's interesting that when we were doing our case and stuff, and we were doing the litigation portion of even how you were very well versed with the judge. The judge knew your name. It was like you guys were friends, which is kind of odd by itself. But with that, the judge even understanding the comments of the other side of being a little out there on some of the expectations, and even the understanding that that's common now. And I'm trying to kind of bounce around my words without giving too much away on this, but it's just the expectation of the other side, and being very young attorneys saying, let's begin negotiating with probably a guy who doesn't have much, and let's start at $1 million. Right.
Yes, and that happens quite often. And young attorneys, until they get a lot of experience, will make some mistakes like that. Yeah. Because
the judge was well aware of it.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so you can see it. After you've been in practice for a while, you can pick out the young attorneys. Okay. And in fact, the attorney on the other side was a fairly nice guy.
Yeah, he was a nice guy.
And but he was just young. He was not experienced. And so when you're when you're a lawyer dealing with an opposing attorney, you're going to find all sorts of attorneys on the other side. You're going to find the inexperienced. You're going to find the old grizzled person who's set in their ways. Generally, I would prefer to have an experienced attorney on the other side. They may be better, but that also makes them understand the reality of a situation and allows negotiations to proceed and actually be successful.
Now, ego plays a big part in this, right? So you've got somebody saying, this is the way, and you're saying, hey, I see what's going on, but the ego of being right, or the fantasy of believing that I'm going to hit a home run on day one, plays a big part in your negotiations.
It does. Ego plays a big part in being a lawyer, okay?
And human beings.
And human beings, right. But if you're going to be a good lawyer, you have to make sure the ego does not sacrifice clients' interests.
Got it.
Right? Young attorneys sometimes don't see the boundary, right? They just feel like they can make something happen by the force of their personality. Yes. The more experienced attorneys certainly demonstrate confidence and knowledge, but they will also understand that clients' interests are the most important, and they won't let ego get in the way of a proper resolution.
And with that ego, which creates a lot of burden on the person who's actually receiving the lawsuit, that really is a big part of them, because it's a psychological game that's being played on the defendant.
Right. Yeah, it is amazing how much psychology plays into being a lawyer.
Yes.
Of course, there are hundreds of different kinds of lawyers out there, right? Yeah. And my experience is basically as a litigator.
Got it.
And in litigation, it definitely is a main factor.
Got it. Okay. The psychological game, right?
It is, yeah. Psychology comes into play where, for instance, if you're going to take a deposition, which if people don't know what that is, it's basically the two attorneys sit down in a room and they put another person in the room and ask them a lot of questions. Yeah. And it's all being taken down word for word. Psychology of how to make that witness tell you the truth when they are motivated not to tell you the truth. Yeah, I think ahead of time about, well, how can I get it through the back door? How can I get them to think I'm going here and they're going to tell me this, and that's actually what I want them to tell me. There's a great deal of psychology there. Another place where psychology comes into play is in the negotiation of a resolution, because you're always the. It isn't a science; it's an art. I tell my clients, and I may have told you that as well.
You did.
Knowing where do you go with the next number in the negotiation to make them go to a number you want, and how do you get them to the ultimate bottom line you're trying to get them to?
Yes.
And let them think they've still won a little victory.
Yes.
Right? It's all psychological.
So what's interesting is like my perception of even going through that experience was like I thought, okay, we're going to get into a room and someone will be going back and forth and doing that. But you were doing a lot of the speaking of telling where the number began. Then they were saying a number. And I hate to say it like this, but it was literally like buying a cow.
Exactly.
It was, the judge was going back and forth. $5,000, $1 million, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, wherever the heck the numbers were.
Right.
And then you start talking about brackets. And I'm thinking like, what the heck is he talking about brackets?
Right.
So what, how is that working? Like, how does that normally play out? Because it was a very different understanding of what I was expecting to see versus what I was being shown.
Right.
And especially the judge was he was a nice guy. Like I was surprised how nice he was.
Yes, yeah. So there are many ways to negotiate, all right? There's the old horse trading or cow trading, where you're swapping numbers, right? Yes. Sometimes people get to a point where that's not working anymore, or they're moving so slow that it would take 2 months in the room to get to a number. And so there are ways that mediators or judges that are doing mediations can try to move the people faster. And one is a concept called brackets. Then there are about 3 or 4 different things they can do. And it's all an attempt to try to get the parties closer so that finally they can find common ground.
Wow. Yeah. And it's, I think you said to me, like normally most people don't walk away happy from both sides.
The common saying is that a good settlement is where both sides walk away a little unhappy.
Okay. And that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, yeah.
So the pain that's going on some of the clients that you would feel or see, like a lot of these guys are panicking significantly, like when people are throwing these scary numbers, and some of these numbers are scary to the point where that would file for bankruptcy. How do you calm people down from that? Because obviously they've never experienced something like this before, and no one wants to really go through this. But how do you calm your clients or people that you're talking to down from those scary numbers?
Right. Now we're talking about when the client is an employer and has been sued. I also work a great deal with employees who are going after bad employers. And there are a lot of bad employers out there. Unfortunately, there are a lot of good employers out there that simply make mistakes or haven't made a mistake but get sued anyway.
Yes.
For that group of people, you have to just give them the best possible advice. Listen, you may have some exposure here. It's probably going to cost this much money. I like to proactively advise my defendant clients. It would make sense for you to try to resolve the matter for this much because you're going to spend 2x to fight it.
Yes.
It's basic business decision math. And I just try to assure them that the number that's being presented is crazy.
Yes.
And in my experience, that's not your true exposure, but here is your true exposure.
Got it.
And hopefully I can convey that with confidence so that they understand that they've got an experienced attorney that has confidence in what they're saying.
Got it. Yeah, no, because it really does. Like a lot of this stuff psychologically, and mine went on for a couple of years, but it really does play with your mind. Is it going to land like this? Is it not? And sometimes you just say, I just want it over. Let's just get this thing over so we can go back to our day-to-day jobs, which is hard enough by itself.
Right, right.
So you are a trial attorney.
Yes. I call myself a trial attorney, but trial attorneys aren't in trial all the time.
Yes. But now with some of the guys coming into this, a lot of these guys don't ever plan to go to trial. And they probably have never been to trial. And you kind of are more scarier to them of you taking them to trial than doing the negotiation, because I think you gave me some statistics of higher percentages in negotiation versus going to trial. I don't think many cases go to trial.
Yeah, I think around 95% of all cases settle as opposed to go to trial.
Now, do you believe that, like, let's just say some of the younger attorneys who really never ever want to go to trial, do you believe that their intention is, I know this is negotiating. I'm not even a good trial attorney anyway, so I'm just trying to get the most I can get. Do you believe that this plays a factor in it?
Yes, there are a group of attorneys out there that are settlement mills. All they do is settle.
Yep.
And if for some reason the case doesn't settle, they then refer the case to a litigator.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think having somebody do the initial groundwork and see if you can resolve the case early on makes sense. And I think it's prudent then, once it's obvious that that's not going to work, to put it in the hands of somebody who's been there and done that.
Yes. Wow. So with your students, is there some like code of conduct that you try to tell them, like not to be a certain way or to be a certain way? Is there some codes that you want to put into people who are trying to come into this? Because when we go to attorneys, the idea is that we believe in somebody who's doing it for justice and for the right reasons, right, versus I'm doing it because I want to fill a bag up.
Right. Well, all attorneys have to comply with the rules of professional conduct, which are basically the attorney's ethical rules. And so as part of the law practice management course that I've taught, we teach how to run a law firm within the confines of the ethical rules of the rules of professional conduct. And there are dozens of those rules. And so in addition to that, the students are required to go through a full class of ethics and then take a state bar exam on ethics separate from the other bar exam. So the state bar does a lot to try to make sure that we're not just growing lawyers that are out there to take money. Unfortunately, there's still some that get by all of that, yes, and will steal client money or do bad things, and that's why the state bar is there with its disciplinary arm to discipline those particular attorneys.
The time that goes into being an attorney, right? Because it's like most people see attorneys and they've got their head buried in paper. A lot of the time their bed is made from a stack of boxes filled with paper.
Yes.
How much time, like how do you balance life with the amount of reading and understanding of a case that people are, that you have to know every single thing about because somebody's life is in your hands?
Right. Well, I did a very bad job of that for many years. I didn't have a good life balance. When I first started as a lawyer, I would work 6 or 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day. It's kind of like, doctors that have to do their internships at a hospital or something. Yeah. You've got to cram a great deal of experience into the early part of your career to build the competence, right? And your confidence as well. And so for 2 or 3 years, actually before I opened my own law firm, I put in a great deal of time. I didn't see my kids a lot. My wife would pack the kids up in the car and drive them to where I was so we could have a picnic in the parking lot with Dad, and then I'd go back upstairs to work and she'd take them home. Not something I would advise as far as being a parent, but it was just part of the paying your dues aspect of being a young associate. And a lot of people go through that. And after that, when I opened my own firm, then I had all the pressures of now not only am I practicing law, but I have to spend time developing business and I have to spend time running a business. Yes. And there's those 3 different aspects. And so that eats up a lot of your time.
And that adds to the complexity of just handling the cases.
Yes.
Like it really does.
It does. And so ultimately, I would like to say that I've learned how to have a better life balance, in part when I started the firm that I have now, and I've got multiple associates working for me. It gives me the ability to not put in the late hours, and I don't make them put in the late hours either. Yeah. I believe that their quality of life is very important. There aren't a lot of law firms that do that with their young associates.
Yeah, I could understand that they would actually put the pressure on the juniors of trying to bring them up the ranks and say, here you go, start reading this for the next 36 hours.
Yes, yeah. So it doesn't mean there are times when we all have to put in a lot of work. And in fact, 2 weeks ago, I ended up putting in an all-nighter, which at my age is not easy anymore. There was one time I did 3 nights in a row all-nighters working on a monster project, but I was a second-year attorney back then, so I could do anything.
Yeah, that was like having breakfast.
Yes. Yeah. So, but the probably the biggest challenge all attorneys have is getting that life health balance. A lot of attorneys have the highest rate of suicide of any other profession in the country. 25% of all lawyers in the state of California that took a survey said that if they had to do it all over again, they wouldn't be a lawyer.
Wow.
They have the highest rate of depression among all professionals, and they have a very high rate of alcoholism and drug addiction because of all the pressures and the stress of the job. And so those are the people that have a very hard time dealing with that. In fact, I've spent the last 10 years of my life lecturing on that to various attorney groups. I call it Surviving and Thriving the Practice of Law, and trying to help people see a path to practice law in a more healthy way.
Yeah, and I think that people don't realize the pressure that comes under the attorneys from everything that they're doing. We're piling on all this paperwork. They've got to read everything. They've got to be on point to be able to give good responses, outwit someone who's trying to outwit them with questions, right?
Exactly.
And it's right. I don't think anybody sees the complexities that go onto a human being to go through that to protect you.
Right. And on top of all of that, you've got a client who is basically on your back, and you've got to take them through the battlefield. Yes. And there's a great deal of responsibility with that. Yes. I believe that when I'm representing a client, they've placed their life in my hands. And in many cases, it's the business's life, if it's a defense situation. In the case of an employee, it could be life-changing circumstances where they've been discriminated against or retaliated against, lost their job, and they need an advocate to carry them through the battlefield. And that adds a great deal of stress to an attorney as well.
Yes. So going back to trials, when you're going through a trial, and obviously why does it get so expensive? Like, what's the reason why it's getting so expensive, the lead up to the trial and all the preparation? I get it that we're trying to save someone's life, but what goes into it?
All right. Well, the first reason it's expensive is because attorney's fees are expensive. Frankly, I think attorney's fees are crazy.
Yes.
Right now, some of the big firms have attorneys that are billing out well over $1,000 an hour, $1,200, $1,500 an hour.
I need to work there for like 5 hours a week.
Yeah, and all you need is to sit in a deposition for 6 hours, and that's going to be almost $10,000 worth of work. My rate is $750 an hour, but I don't. For the people that I represent as plaintiffs, I'm doing it straight contingency. I basically don't make a penny unless I get a recovery for my client. For my defendant clients, it's a lot of money, and so what I try to do is have a lot of the work done by younger associates, and I do the high-end stuff. Yeah. But it takes a lot of time to do a good job on a complex case, and employment cases oftentimes are relatively complex. Several depositions, preparing for trial, there's a great deal of work involved, and so you might put in 300 or 400 hours just in trial prep, and the trial itself.
Did you say 400 hours?
300 or 400 hours. Ooh. Depending on the complexity of the case. Yeah. I've got one case right now that has 80,000 documents in the case. Just picking out which documents to use as exhibits at trial will take dozens of hours. Wow. And so that's the problem. I mean, the problem is that litigation is not for anybody other than the Fortune 500s, really. Yes. Everybody else under that is going to be pressured by the cost of litigation to perhaps make business decisions, to, say, cave to unreasonable demands and things like that, because it's just so hard for people to get to trial because of the cost of attorney's fees.
So like when you're starting this trial, and it's like setting up the pieces of a chessboard to play a complex game of chess, but or a card game, if you want to call it that. So it's like you don't know who's going to be in the stand, how they're going to come up with you with questions, and trying to do this debating. And it's funny because now we go back to when you started debating and where the debate comes from, but now you've got a little more time on your hands to actually have a very sophisticated debate.
Right.
And that's kind of what it turned into.
I like to consider a trial to be like producing a play,
Yeah.
right? And so when you're going to produce a play, you've got to go out and put all the pieces in place, and you've got to make sure that everybody knows their line and when they're going to where they're going to be blocked.
Yes.
And so you're putting on a presentation for 12 people in the jury box and the judge, and you want it to go as smoothly as possible.
Yes.
And so really, there's a lot of work that goes into that, as you might imagine. And depending on the size of the case, I've had cases where there have been 20 witnesses and perhaps 300 exhibits. And I've been in other cases where there have been 2 witnesses and 20 exhibits. And so it depends. But the bigger the case, the more time it takes to block out that play that you're going to put on for the jury.
Now, what about like if you have, let's just say, an attorney who's a great actor, and that person is really like spinning words that people are going to say, wow, 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 and they're clapping for him because he's doing such a great job. Did you ever experience that where you've had people who are just so great at performing? Like really, like you say, wow, this guy's performance, and I might even buy into him.
Yeah, I think that many of the better trial attorneys are actors at heart.
Got it.
Right? And they are, and so yes, you see a lot of them. In fact, when I'm talking to young attorneys, one of the things I say is if you want to learn oral advocacy skills, just go down and sit and watch some trial attorneys at work, because you're going to see experts at this type of oral advocacy. You can find out the names of certain attorneys and see where they may be trying cases at the time and go watch them, because I think that's a great way to learn. But yes, I think it is acting, and there are a lot of really good actors as trial lawyers.
And I think that's kind of very scary because you don't know whether it's true or not true, but the quality of the acting or the ability of them to manipulate a situation doesn't mean that justice is going to be served, right?
Well, that's true. In fact, when I went to law school, I decided there were 2 areas of law I didn't want to go into. One was family law, because I had already gone through an ugly divorce and didn't want to deal with all those emotions. The other is criminal law. And the reason I didn't want to go into that is because I thought I was cocky enough at the time to think I was going to be a good lawyer. And I didn't want my skill to either let a guilty man go free or somebody who wasn't guilty go to jail, depending on which side I chose. So I just didn't want to go there. But yes, I do believe good advocacy can change the outcome of any case. Wow. And it's just a truism. That's why you need to have good lawyers on your side.
Yes.
Because you're going to be, there are a lot of people that I answer questions online, and a lot of people are people who are trying to handle the case on their own.
Yes.
And I try to convince them that's not the way to go, because you're going to get massacred by experienced attorneys who have those skills.
Yes. And actually, so with those numbers of the cases that you answer online because of the work that you do, you said that it's in the 40,000 questions per year that you are answering.
No, it's not per year, but cumulatively I've answered about a little, I think it's around 40,000 questions now. It's a website called AVO, and it's just a basic question and answer site. You don't get specific advice, just general legal knowledge. People have an issue, and we provide general legal knowledge. They're volunteer people who just go on there and answer the questions. And
the rumors on the streets are that you are pro at it.
I love it. I'm what I call the king of employment law on AVO, because I've answered more questions than the next 3 people underneath me combined. And because I love it so much. Every day I'll wake up in the morning, the first thing I'll do is go in and answer some AVO questions. Then when I get home from work at night, I'll go answer some more. And that's just something I enjoy doing. It's kind of a hobby.
Do you feel that why attorneys go a lot into politics, because there's a lot of similar attributes that they're trying to put to the table? Because it can be like the debate of going onto the floor in the House or the Senate.
That could well be. I know that some people actually go to law school as a stepping stone to politics with that goal in mind. Also, once you become an attorney, I'm going to interrupt my train of thought here. There's a movie called The Devil's Advocate, and it's an amazing movie with Al Pacino where he plays the devil. And in there, he says something like, attorneys have the ultimate backstage pass. And what he means by that is, as attorneys, you get to see the inner workings of each of your clients, and you get to know about how certain businesses work and how people think, right? And I think once you're involved in oral advocacy and you have that ultimate backstage pass, you have a much better understanding of how things work. And I think that leads some people to go into politics. Yes. I think it leads some people to go into business. Many people will leave being a lawyer to become a CEO or yes. that type of thing.
So the ethics in this, I mean, for me, the ethics seem to be one of the most important things about this, of the quality and the caliber of attorneys that are being created who don't take advantage of people, because it's really, we're playing with a knife, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And ethics, again, when I teach my students about running a law office, I talk about, there are three legs of the stool. There's the ability to practice law, the ability to develop business, and the ability to run a business. Yes. But the top, that stool that holds it all together, are our rules of professional conduct. And everything we do has to be done in light of what those rules tell us we need to do.
Yes. If you weren't going into law, would you feel like there's another field now that you would have wanted to go into?
Yeah, actually, it's very different. I probably would have gone into preaching.
Wow. Yeah. There you go. Debates go out again.
Well, it does. There's some speaking involved there too, but yeah, it's very different though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. It's interesting. Just hearing all this, it's really given me a very different insight into the law, becoming a lawyer or litigation. It really has, and it's funny that you say the preaching thing. Now, I'm putting all these pieces together of where it began at the grocery store to where you are today in the debate. It's really amazing. It really is amazing. Uh-huh. For new people coming into law now, what would you tell them?
I want them to really determine if law is what they want to do. There's an interesting statistic that about half of all people that graduate from law school and spend the time and the money to take the bar exam, become a lawyer, that about 10 to 12 years later, only half of them are still practicing law. Now, some of them have moved into politics or business like we talked about, but some of them just don't like the practice of law. The high pressure, that type of a thing. And so it would be so much better if they knew before they went into law school and invested that 3 years of time and that almost $100,000 in tuition and all of the heartache of young associate work and that kind of a thing, if they knew ahead of time. So before people go to law school, they should talk to other lawyers. They should see if this is really what they want to do. Yeah. It's not what you see on television in any sense. Even the people you see on television, you're seeing only the highlights that in reality only happen once or twice a year, 3 times a year. Maybe if you're a criminal defense or criminal prosecutor, you're going to be in court a lot like you see on LA Law.
So we don't get to shout out, I object, I object.
Well, yeah, that does happen in court.
Sustained.
But the biggest thing I would want people to do is really look at it and see if that's what you want. Don't go into it because it's the next logical step in your education and you think it's the way to earn a good amount of money. Because to earn the good amount of money, you're going to give up a big part of your life.
Yes. Neil, I want to thank you very much for coming in. This has been extremely insightful for me. I will now become a lawyer for $1,000 an hour. But thank you very much for coming in.
You're welcome, and you'll get my bill.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.